Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Katie and today I just fancied a bit of a change. Aside from any mystery art boxes that I've been receiving, I really just fancied doing something a little different. I've been very watercolour centric just lately, and that's not a bad thing. I do enjoy watercolours quite a lot. However, I think I owe it to myself to at least keep going with other techniques that I've picked up and learnt over the years, and just make sure I can keep them skills going, which I think is important for techniques that you like, even if you might not necessarily use them all the time. As you can see, I am working with a liner pen, and I use a combination of the Unipin ones as well as the Sakura ones, and they range from size 0.2 right up to 0.8. I wanted a good mixture of line thickness for this one. I've also gone for a Art Nouveau style because I think I'm kind of getting into that at the moment, so I'm not going to go overboard with it, but I do feel like I need to do a few pieces like this. The thing I really like about this Art Nouveau style is how the hair's done. I mean, those are hair goals, right? But I like how everything interlinks and has that flow to it, and I'm getting tarot card vibes here. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but what inspired me actually to do this was, my channel logo, the Star Maiden, and that was one of my earlier videos. Well, that's been up for a year now, and well, I guess I've been publishing videos for a year now, and you could say this is loosely based on that one. Of course, that was done in watercolour, and I perhaps didn't want to do a remix of it using watercolours again, so line art and alcohol markers seemed like the right choice. The paper I'm using is by Canson, and it is called The Wall, and this stuff really can take it. It doesn't bleed through with markers, and unlike marker paper, it's got quite an opacity to it, which I like. Personally, I'm not a fan of marker paper just due to how thin it is, and I don't know, that doesn't sit right with me. I like a thick paper to work on, even if it's just a drawing and I'm not using marker pens. I like my paper to be just a little bit on the thick side. And for good reason as well. It is time to start adding some isopropyl alcohol, and I thought I'd get some nice close-up shots so you can see exactly what this does to the inks. Now, you could argue, I suppose, really, this is like a watercolour. However, you don't quite get these really detailed blooms with it, I guess. I'm not really sure what else I can use to describe it. Either way, there's just something quite mesmerising about the application of this, and I really like the texture that it leaves behind. It just means for the backgrounds I can be a little bit looser, a little less tidy with it, and I know that this texture will soften those lines a little and stop it looking quite so rugged. And it's really nice as well for areas where there's just one bit of colour and there's none on the page, and it just pushes it out so it's not such a harsh line there. I think the beauty of alcohol markers as well is I can go over it again in the same colours, and I know they're transparent, so I can still add a bit more depth to it, but I don't have to worry about it lifting the ink off or wrecking the page or anything, and it not taking away those textures that I've applied. So yay, I'd missed marker pens. I decided to give her really yellowy golden hair, just like a star, I guess. But the funny thing is that this pen, although it does kind of look it on screen now that I'm voiceovering, it actually says it's a pastel yellow green. It's like a cheap pen from the Works, and I quite like the Works markers. They're okay. They're not massively consistent with the colours, but if you're just going to use it on one piece, that's okay. I guess I like it because it's not too golden yellow, and when I go in there with the details with a pro marker, it sort of softens it down a little bit. She hasn't quite got such, well, it just looks a little bit more natural. Just bear with me on this one. The pro markers I'm using have got a brush tip, and I quite like the pro markers. I think they're a nice cheap alternative to Copics, although I've never personally purchased any copics before because they're so expensive. I have got a couple which I got from a scroll box a while ago, and I do end up using that on this piece as well. But since as I'd got a nice brush pen in the colour I wanted to, it would be foolish not to utilise that gorgeous nib to get those strands of hair flowing with the form that I've drawn down. God, I sound really technical today, don't I? I think it's just because I haven't done this for a while and it's just made me think a little bit more about the process. As a bit of a mixed media artist, if I can call myself that, I do think, like I said earlier in the video, that it is important to keep brushing up on skills that you think you might use again, or just skills you enjoy using. Even though the media and the application might be different, it's still a good way to make sure you know your colour theory, you can get your design to fit materials, and it's just a fresh way of keeping ideas going as well. I decided to add a little extra ink to the edges of the border and the figure on the picture, and that's to just make it pop from the paper a little bit more. And now it's time to go in for another colour on her hair, and again I'm using a brush tip for this just because it just gives the right effect. And look at it, just look at it, that flow, and it's really nice and it seems really natural. I wanted her to be quite pale and sort of celestial on this. Obviously she's the star maiden, and I went with one of the lightest colour pro markers that I got, and again that's another brush tip one, and it just went down like a dream. I used more corally tones to add the initial shadows on there, and that just makes everywhere that's highlighted pop out a bit more. That saves me a bit of work. I wanted her lips to look slightly bee-stung and quite natural, but not too bold. And I know when I'm putting it on the paper, it's so strange working in these. I suppose it's not too dissimilar for waiting for your watercolours to dry. But when you initially put the marker pen down, it does look a lot more saturated until that alcohol in there's dried it off. For her eyes, I used blues and I decided to layer them up. Now I was half tempted to use the isopropyl alcohol to blend them in a little bit, but then I realised it is quite unpredictable, and as you'll notice on the areas that I have used this isopropyl alcohol, I've kept it away from the main figure herself so the colours don't interfere. That is the only downside to adding alcohol. I suppose I could achieve it with a blender pen, but again though, it's still a little unpredictable as to where that colour is going to spread. For the framework and the background, and that's what I'm going to call it, I used some ink that I got from AliExpress, and to be fair, it applied really nicely. I wasn't expecting it to be as dark as it was. I was expecting it to be quite washy, but it went down really nicely, and it is an India ink, and you can't really tell, and maybe it's the paper I'm using it on, but it does have a few specks of gold mica powder in there, and that was the appeal. And it didn't matter how many times I shook that bottle up, the gold was just not coming through. But never mind, I still like how it went down. After adding that framework as well, I decided to re-outline the figure in certain areas with a thicker pen, again just to make it all stand out, and just touch up a few areas with the brush pens, and that was just to add a little bit more definition and shadow. Now I did find that using the light purple copic pen, it just added a very nice subtle way of adding definition, I guess, for want of better words there, and it just sort of ties in the background colours with it. Not forgetting the good old gel pen to add those final highlights and a few twinkly stars in the background, and I just wanted to add perhaps just a little more vibrancy to her hair, but only on a selected few strands. And there we have it, we are all done. I'm so glad I did this. I'd really missed using marker pens. If you have enjoyed this video, please give me a like, drop in the comments if you've got anything to say. I always have a look and I always reply. And if you haven't already, why not hit that subscribe button, and then you won't miss out on any other videos. And if you're curious, there's a couple on screen now you can click on. Anyway, I will see you on the next one. Bye!